What is up, guys? Welcome into another episode of From the Wing. I am Christian Clark, the Pelicans beat writer for NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. We are off and running into training camp. We're closing in on the end of the second week. The Pelicans have a preseason game in the books now. They will not play again until Sunday in Miami. Their game Friday in Orlando has been canceled because of hurricane. Prayers to everybody in West Florida right now. On this week's show, we're going to talk about Zion Williamson, who looked excellent in New Orleans' first preseason game against Orlando. We're going to talk about the Pelicans finally having a point guard per Zion Williamson. That's not per me. That's per Zion. We're going to talk about Jordan Hawkins. We're going to talk about Brandon Ingram, and we're going to finish up with the GM survey. Adam, how are you doing this week, buddy?
We got basketball. We don't have to, we're just getting into the good part of the year where we actually have stuff to talk about. I got to see Zion Williamson attacking the basket. I got to see us, whether meaningful or not, we could debate. I got to see us beat a team that we historically struggle with. And at least in the one-on-one matchups during the first half when things mattered, I saw dudes that we have struggled to deal with just get manhandled. So, yeah, I'm good. I'm doing great. I'm, better every minute.
You know what else we saw? We saw the Pelicans take 43 pointers per game. And I know I have lamented on this podcast, oh, don't tell me we're going to take 43s per game again this season. I've been Charlie Brown and you guys have been Lucy ripping away the football from me right as I'm running up to it for 2 seasons in a row. But guess what? I'm Charlie again, and I'm running up to the football to try and kick it. And I'm about to find out if Lucy's going to rip it away again.
Yeah, I heard we got some words out there about a 43-point target. I was very excited for you.
Per Matt Ryan, that was written on the whiteboard on the Pelicans' first day of training camp. 40, as in we want to take 43s per game.
I mean, look, I'm really only smiling about this specifically for you because of how silly it's been the last couple of years. But, hey, aspire to greatness, aim for the moon and fall among the stars.
Well, this is what a fool I am. Like I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm like, hey, look, there's going to be a lot more shooting in the rotation. The Pelicans are going to be committed to playing a different style of basketball this year. I don't think it would be out of the realm of possibility to take 37, 38 per game. So I'm kind of buying it.
All right.
I can always be talked in. That's the thing. I can always be talked in. All right, before we get into some takeaways from the Magic game, we are, of course, presented by Crescent Canna, New Orleans' #1 cannabis company and the maker of the highly satisfying Crescent 9 THC seltzer. Crescent 9 is uplifting. It's relaxing. It is my favorite drink to sip on while I'm watching a game or while I'm relaxing at night with Netflix, HBO. Crescent 9 and the Bitcoin documentary on HBO, a match made in heaven right there. Comes highly recommended. Crescent Can has 7 THC beverage flavors, the 5 milligrams, all the way up to the 50 milligrams. Because it's made with hemp-derived THC, Crescent 9 THC seltzer is legal for adults from coast to coast. It's also registered with the Louisiana Department of Health for compliance here in Louisiana. You can get Crescent 9 online at crescentcanna.com or pick it up at Rouse's, Canseco's, Zapardo's, Total Wine, bars, music venues. You must be 21 years or older to purchase or to consume THC products. Consult with your doctor before using any cannabis product if you have a medical condition or are taking medication. All right, Adam. Zion Williamson, his line against Orlando. He only played 19 minutes. He only played in the first half. 16 points on 8 of 11 shooting, 8 rebounds, and 3 assists. My take is pretty good.
Oh, yeah. So, look, we've been looking for little data elements this entire time we've talked about from January into the offseason. Will he look the same when you see him? And then he does. Will he sound the same? And he does. We are in a consistent track right now where this guy is, he's farther along than he's, I think, ever been athletically other than one. I mean, we've had one other offseason that's gone similarly well. And he started really, really well, and it was a great season. This is the most well-rounded Zion, though, and he's at about like in the 80 to 90% ready to go range, which for him, like that's an astronomical feat. He was able to maintain where he left off at the end of last season, despite an injury. And now we're right off to the races in preseason with Zion having the ball in his hands, making Jonathan Isaac look like a plaything. Like we saw everything you could want to see right out the gate. He could not be stopped. Nobody could touch him. And you got to see guys comfortably playing with and off of him in that same time. So it's like you couldn't really have asked for a better debut given the circumstances.
Yeah, I put it like this on Twitter. Zion is starting the race this year at the starting line and not 30 yards behind it. It just felt like in so many of these seasons, he's having to play catch up from the very first game. And it took him, I don't know, until basically the beginning of January last year, it felt like to really look like the dominant Zion Williamson that we've seen in flashes throughout his NBA career. And we saw, that whole stretch at Duke. He's starting the race at the starting line this year. And I think that's really exciting. Like one thing that just raises the Pelican ceiling in a race's fit concerns is you're just getting all NBA Zion. And I think that's very much within the realm of possibility this year. I think we could finally see this guy make an all NBA team. I wouldn't be surprised if this is his best NBA season. He looks like he's in good shape physically. Everything we read, we heard, we thought we saw, it looks like it's true. And he also seems to be in a great place mentally. I mean, I think that's been my biggest thing during training camp. He was mad during training camp at the start of last season. There was all that stuff off the court that happened that, I don't think that was, the media's fault or anything like that. I mean, that was self-inflicted, but he was mad. He was just like terse answers, didn't want to talk. I think that stuff is behind him now. It does seem like he has legitimately matured to me. So that's been great to see. My basketball notes for him, while he made a joke there was a lot of truth in it about, hey, I'm finally playing with a real point guard. There was a play late in the first half where him and DeJounte pick and roll. DeJounte feeds him, easy layup. But Zion also did a lot of initiating. Even though Zion is playing, with the real point guard, according to him, there was also a lot of point Zion mixed in there, I thought.
Yeah, and the other half of that question in that tandem is how comfortable is DeJounte Murray floating off of Zion, and how does his body language look, and how does his game go? Because we just had a lot of questions about him next to a high usage, ball carrying guard at another team, and it didn't go so hot. And look, early returns match the words coming out of his mouth. He looked very comfortable. He looked like he was in all of the right spaces. The shot didn't go down a few times. Like it was kind of simple. His shots were open. Like he took good shots. Some of them were designed. He had one specifically where they had a nice little screen just short of the baseline, turned around, and it just kind of went up and down, bounced out. Had a couple of corner threes where he's shooting them kind of on the fly, falling sideways, over adjusted to the right, missed them sideways. But when he did get straight up and down looks, those two shots went down. I was happy with every shot he took. And yeah, you saw a good mix of both, which I think lends to both of them in terms of how the offense is going to run. If they can balance that out, if that's a thing we can maintain when the entire starting lineup is out there, I think they both benefit from that.
Yeah, and Willie Green decided to go DeJounte Murray, CJ McCollum, Herb, Zion Williamson, and Daniel Tice. All the regulars played except for Brandon Ingram, and Willie Green opted to go with the traditional center out there, Tice. The Magic are a huge team. They start three guys who are listed at 6'10", Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, and Wendell Carter Jr. A very big team across the board. And in the backcourt now, they got KCP and Suggs. They're big. They're going to be really good defensively. I thought Tice looked good. I just like Tice's fit on this team, and I'm not saying he's going to be a top 10 starting center or anything like that, but he doesn't need the ball. He's perfectly happy to do his job without it. He's not going to demand any post ups. I think there's going to be a ton of 4-5 pick and roll with Zion and Tice this year. Tice is, a solid screener and a heady screener too. I think understands timing and angles. I'm looking for a ton of clear out the right side of the floor. Tice set a screen on Zion's guy. Zion going right to the rim. And he's got 3 guys weak side he can kick it to. That's Zion's dominant hand is left attacking the basket, like going in. It's Zion going, like being able to build up ahead of his team and go right at 5s. Willie Green talked about the 4-5 pick and roll a little bit after the game. And he's like, when he got a guard screening for Zion, that allows the 5 to be kind of a roamer and muck it up. When you're going 4-5 pick and roll, Zion can directly engage the 5 with the head of steam. It's a more advantageous matchup for him. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a ton of 4-5 pick and roll this year.
Yeah, same thing on Tice. Neither of us is saying he's going to be an all-star or anything like that. Neither of us is saying he should play 30 minutes a game. But I think we were in debate about like how good is the quality of the 15 to 25 minutes he does play? How good are they going to look? And how soon are they going to look decent? And I thought it would take longer, honestly, like specifically defensively. I thought he was really like, he was aggressive and he was all over the place. Thought offensively, he was in all of the right places. He had a little dunker spot layoff that he put in. Like he just did everything. He had a 3 from the wing. And yeah, I was happy with everything he did right out the gate. And I thought it might take longer. I thought it might take like several weeks to get oriented. But the one thing about Tice, this is the only way he's ever played. He is less new to this than some of our own team members are. So like there is less orienting himself to this scheme. This is what he does. So he just kind of went in and like grabbed his lunch pail and kind of did like it's game 1 of the regular season and he's ready to go. So that was really nice to see. And the other thing I'll say was a takeaway for me from this game, aside from Zion, the amount of competitiveness that they got from everyone for a preseason game 1 was like, Willie's got to be thrilled with the aggression he saw across the board defensively from everybody on that team, even at the end of the game when they were like falling apart and Graf was, getting into the pits a little bit, the pits of despair, because we were losing balls and not being able to inbound and whatnot. Defensive aggression, and we'll get to Hawkins in a second. Like that's the calling card. Transition is going to be the calling card. And they did it to a team that has historically given them problems and wants to do the same thing. So cool.
Yeah, I think that was a good note. They did play really hard for, it being a preseason game and one that was tipped off at 12:30 p.m. on a Monday, just a weird time. It wasn't a big crowd just because of the time and day it was held on. The Saints were on Monday Night Football later that day, but it was good competitiveness from them. And, you look at DeJounte Murray. DeJounte Murray is motivated to win. I mean, that was not a successful 2-year run in Atlanta in terms of wins and losses. Zion Williamson, a ton to prove. I mean, Herb Jones, you never have to worry about that guy at all. I mean, Tice, absolute pro, guy who's contributed to plenty of winning teams. I think there's just a lot of guys with something to prove. I mean, Trey Murphy's not able to play right now, but he definitely falls into that category. I think Jordan Hawkins falls into that category. I hope we continue to see that. It was great effort. I thought, across the board from a lot of different regulars. I laughed really hard after the game when Zion was asked about playing with DeJounte Murray, and his quote was, with DeJounte, I was telling him about making a joke with CJ, like, it's the first time I played in a while with a real point guard. And Zion, after that, he says, I'm just kidding, but I think that was about 65% serious and 35% good-natured ribbing. I definitely think that's been, I don't want to call it a frustration, but something from the Zion side for a while of, can we get a real point guard in here? Like it almost makes me wonder. It's like, what would this have looked like if, I don't know, there'd just been that established lead guard? And I guess, the Drew thing early on, we had Lonzo, Pelicans got off Lonzo. And then the other part is the center. It's like when you're building with Zion, like, yeah, get a center or get a point guard he can run pick and roll with and spam that and get Zion some easy looks, and get a center so Zion doesn't have to shift there. And it feels like for a lot of his tenure, we just haven't had those two things. We definitely got one of those two things right now. Like we have the lead guard.
Yeah. The things I called out in the offseason, the things that I was excited about to get from DeJounte, like we already saw it. There was one specific clip in there, and I forget when it was. I tweeted about it when it happened. But DeJounte got trapped. He got a double team trap on the wing, pretty high up, close to the 3-point arc. And the guy that was on the corner man decided to blitz around the backside of the double team to try and snipe the ball out of his pocket. As soon as that guy got close to him, DeJounte pivoted the other direction, dribbled through the screen, and went up. And that, when I talked about like having guys that can split a screen, that can split a double team, this is why. Pressure was coming. He saw it coming. He immediately made a decision and has the ball handling ability and the agility to jump between those two guys, maintain his dribble, and keep going. They weren't ready for it and got him out of a jam. We are not able historically to dribble out of those jams. So to have another dude that can catch that pressure, because that is how teams jumped on us the final third of the year last year, when we didn't have 3, C+ to B level ball handlers all out there to kick the ball around to, we just get high end pressure pushed up above the 3-point line and we give it up. This is a guy that can survive that. He did it multiple times. He did it with his strength. He does a lot of off arm stuff to keep distance with those giant pterodactyl wings he's got. And yeah, it was fun. It was fun to see that stuff. It's fun to see like an easy pocket pass get made to Zion. Just stuff we haven't seen. It's just the truth.
Yeah, I mean, they needed another guy who could just go by people off the dribble. I mean, that was a huge part of the reason they traded for DeJounte in the first place. They had this series against Oklahoma City where their best advantage creator, Zion, could not play, and the offense was just in the toilet bowl. I mean, just horrible offense to watch. I know Oklahoma City is a very good defensive team, and they're probably even going to be a better defensive team, which is crazy to think about this year. Adding Hartenstein and Alex Caruso. They needed a guy like DeJounte. Like, there's just, Brandon has trouble creating that separation at times. I mean, he's smooth, he's skilled, he's not that explosive. CJ, sometimes, but look, he's 33. He's a scorer. He's never been a burner or anything like that. Like, they needed another dude like this. I think DeJounte is going to be very focused on passing first and then scoring. I mean, he's a very aggressive player, but I think he's very much looking at this like, okay, I'm going to set everybody else up and then I'm going to get mine. And I think he's going to try to be that guy where I'm getting the ball to my teammates early on. If they need me to take over late, like, he'll put that on his shoulders. But I think it's going to be pass first a lot of the time from him.
When that man is averaging, double-digit scoring, like in the teens, like in the high teens, and like 8 assists and 2 steals a game, I'm going to be very, very pleased. And it'll bounce up. It'll be like 25 one day and 15 the next and whatnot. If that's the version of him that we get, then that trade was won 10 times over, because that's the release valves you needed for everything that happened to this team last year. You got most of them solved with him. The remainder is now like the new one that we need is like, okay, eventually we got to do something about this center position. But right now, at least the offense works. And the offense will continue to work, and it'll work against just about everybody, because they are going to be fast. They're going to be easy points. And like, who do you focus on defending in transition against that 5? And then if that 5, you swap out Trey, if you swap in BI, like, they're going to be tough to deal with when they're off to the races, and they're going to be more apt to get off to the races than they have been the last few years.
Yeah. I mean, look, that's been a huge thing from Willie Green since he took over. Create turnovers, score in transition. I think the Pelicans have already done a pretty good job of that. I think they're going to be top 5 in all those categories. Opponents turnovers forced, fast break points, transition points. Like, I think they're going to rank really high in all those categories. DeJounte, definitely one of those guys. Herb, one of those guys. Zion, one of those guys. Brandon, a little bit. Trey Murphy, a little bit. I mean, there's so many guys who fit this style of, hey, look, we're going to go try to get easy, turn you over and get easy baskets. When I look ahead to Sunday against Miami, I'm taking Willie Green at his word that Brandon Ingram will not be able to play. Willie Green told reporters at practice today, which is Wednesday, that Brandon Ingram is not hurt, but that the plan is for him to only play in the Pelicans preseason finale. So I'm going to take him at his word that no BI for Sunday, and Trey Murphy is still on the shelf with a hamstring. That leads me to believe we're going to get another look at the starting lineup that they used Monday. And what I wanted to ask you is, how many games do you think Tice will start this season? Like if you had to guess right now, like what would you set the over under at?
I think so. The tough part is like knowing. So the question marks are Trey and BI. Like, how long is Trey out as an option, and what is this availability thing with BI? Like, does it mean he sits every back to back and whatnot? Because that, like, the one thing I'm not concerned, but the one thing that's in the back of my head now, because of how this preseason is already transpiring, is like, hey, we have 6 back to backs in the first 25 games. Does that mean, is that an automatic 6 missed games? Is that automatically going to be 19 games that BI is not playing? Because if his size is out of the lineup, then yeah, I'm probably throwing Tice in. So I'm going to say he picks up 6 right there. I'm going like north of 30. I'm probably going like 35 and a half.
That feels right because you've got the trade deadline as the other variable.
Yes.
I mean, as it stands today, I would be surprised if the Pelicans don't try to trade for a big before February 8th or 9th or whenever the trade deadline is. So, yeah, I mean, you've got the trade thing. You've got the how many games will BI play in, and then you've got the trade deadline as variables. Yeah, somewhere in the mid-30s sounds right. I do think he's going to start a fair amount of games. We'll see how much Willie Green just changes his lineup from night to night. That's something players have indicated during training camp he might do, but Willie has not loved to do in the past. I get this is a little bit of a different situation. Are you concerned about Ingram missing games even though he's healthy right now? You know, one game into the preseason, or at what point are you like, okay,
I'm
don't
not
love
worried
this?
about it. I'm not worried about it yet. So preseason, I don't really care about. Like, I just want to see that guys, like, clearly they were executing the offense at a high level and they were giving a lot of energy on defense. All I want to see in preseason is like, how far along are we? And it seems like everybody's acclimated enough to Willie's concepts at this point that the defense has started at a high level. We normally have to like round into form defensively a little bit. We usually start pretty slow. We have an advantageous schedule in like our first 10 games, and then it gets pretty hard in November. So I'm not concerned yet. I would be lying if I said I'm not concerned at all. And my concern level, I reserve the right for it to go up on October 30th, which is our first back-to-back against Golden State. If BI just like openly sits healthy on that back-to-back, and we call it like, you know, if he gets the old Al Horford back-to-back spasms, then yeah, I'm just going to like go in and subtract 10 games from his games played. And then that would probably mean that every time he's got an ouchie, we're going to get a game off too. So then like tack on another 7. So yeah, like I legitimately, it's just going to change my perspective on what's going to happen with him this year. But I hope my one like rational little line of thinking, you know, that one political poll that like keeps you tied to a future that you believe in. Will we have enough like initiation and usage just onslaught when BI is out there that his only opportunity to hit his contract numbers is just to let that thing fly? And if that happens, and if he needs to play games because he's got to, like, I got to stay averaging over 20 points. I got to get my 5 assists. I got to get those 6 rebounds. If I think I'm still a max guy, I got to go get those numbers or nobody's going to think that. So my one little like hope in the back there is like, maybe none of this stuff happens.
I think you raise a really important point. Is he going to play in back-to-backs? And we just don't know. But I agree that October 30th date is going to be something I'm going to be looking out for. Look, I think the question of a guy's wanted a contract extension. He did not get it, but he's being paid $36 million for this season's worth of work. Should he try to play in as many games as possible? I understand society has shifted where, man, we really are generous to the athletes sometimes. I think, like when you try to hold them accountable, some people don't like it. I can see both sides of it. My personal thoughts are you should try to play in every game if you're being compensated $36 million. But that's my personal opinion.
We let Al Horford skip a whole season for OKC, and OKC took no negative anything for it. Like a whole season.
That was a way different situation, though.
But still, that's a thing where a guy a guy who was great at the time, who was a valuable player in the league, goes to a team, and it's just we just didn't even we didn't even blink at it. Like, yeah, okay, Al Horford's going to sit the whole season. Chet gets what I think it was an ankle. And we were like, oh yeah, he's done for the year. Like, wait, wow, it's so early. What? We are protecting the assets these days, and the assets want to protect themselves and have had a lot of power to do that. And
OKC was not trying to win that year. The Pelicans are trying to win this year.
Yeah, but so I can go back to all the classic arguments, like fans, tickets, there is some incumbent pressure here to put out a product. I know we've gotten to the point where we do open tanking and all that stuff, but we've tried to combat those things. So hopefully we rebound a little bit back to where we're looking at these things a little funnier.
Yeah, I just can't have any strong takes one game into the preseason. I need to see, how it develops a little bit. I mean, I think what I said after media day, is this going to be a professional effort from Brandon or not? And we don't know. It's too early in the season to tell. At times in the past, I think people felt like, no, this wasn't. The Team USA thing is an example. We don't need to rehash all the history of the Pelicans.
Yeah, we've done enough BI talk all
summer.
Yep.
All right. Jordan Hawkins. Look, I'm a known Jordan Hawkins believer. It was not a great summer league for him. He was playing he was playing point guard. He did not look very comfortable in that role on this Pelicans roster. He does not have to do that. Jordan Hawkins can have the advantages created for him and hit catch and shoot jumpers, and also hopefully run around a lot of screens and get freed up that way. That's hopefully something the Pelicans are going to do a lot of. I thought he looked really good in this game against Orlando. Hit 2 threes, kind of scored from everywhere, got to the line a lot. I mean, I just think he is a fearless player. I mean, I'm a huge fan of just he has a pure shooting stroke. As pure of a shooting stroke as you're ever going to see. He's got gravity. He gets great lift in his jumper. I'm just a believer in his mental makeup too. I think Hawkins has winning energy. I think there are guys who have losing energy in the league who I won't say, but I look at Hawkins, I'm he's a winner, man. He loved playing for Hurley at UConn when Hurley was MFing him and they won a national championship. I like Hawkins. I think you can coach him hard. I think he's got an elite NBA skill. I hope they run him off a bunch of screens in those bench units this year.
I agree. I believe he is a quiet, silent killer. May actually have some bodies that we don't know about. The offense is not the question for me. The offense is clear. We know what it is. We've talked about it. He's a real scorer. He has got to compete the same way that he just did in that Orlando game defensively. This is going to be weird to say. He talked about valuing the ball more and trying to get rebounds and be aggressive about rebounds and whatnot. We got those little snippets again. He knows what the task is. He has to do the same thing that Jose did to him. When you get these minutes, put them in a stranglehold. Every loose ball, you're on the deck. You're running into guys left and right. You're skying for rebounds that are anywhere near you. You are confronting guys at the point of attack. When they make their move, you're a step ahead, not a step behind. He has defensively been terrible to this point. He looked great in this game as far as he can be. He's a small dude. He was in the right places. He was hyper aggressive. His hands were all over anything that was anywhere near him. That's the level of effort it's got to be on defense for you to get to see the sniper guy.
Two
And
blocks. The
it was
one block he had where he came across the lane was like, whoa, who was that just did that?
Yeah. He just, nobody watches this stuff. Like, this is only for like super nerds. But I just never got that excited the last couple of years about him and about his place in the rotation, because you saw rotation misses. You saw like him being late to any time the clock ran into the 20s. The last guy that got the ball when he was standing 8 feet open, it's because Jordan didn't get over a screen or like didn't know he was supposed to be out there and he got there late. It was really, really bad. This was already just like so much better than I have even expectations for, that it now like raises the watermark for me for what I think he's capable of. And like, that was the thing coming out of the draft that you thought was going to make it okay. He looked really aggressive, had a nice, nice deflection rate and steals at UConn. If you're going to be that small, you got to be that aggressive. You got to be that dog. We saw a little bit of it, little snippet, maybe.
Yeah, and you're right. Him being competent defensively is going to largely determine if he's going to play or not, because that was the difference last year. Go to NBA.com/stats. Like, look at the on-off defensive numbers for Jose. Look at the on-off defensive numbers for Jordan Hawkins. That's the entire story of why Jose Alvarado, took those minutes, and Jordan Hawkins was not in the rotation at the end of the year. And, maybe there's some games when they can play together. But just the state that Hawkins was at defensively last year kind of made that untenable. And he's got to show improvement on that end. And he knows that. He talked about it. Some other guys talked about it. One of the things I've enjoyed is Zion Williamson has been one of his huge believers. Like, you can kind of tell when it's just empty praise and when it's real. And the Zion stuff seemed kind of real, even dating back to last season. I think Zion had a quote during Hawkins' rookie season where he's like, that brother has confidence. I think maybe Zion just looks at us like, put some shooting next to me and let's cook. But he definitely is a Hawkins believer.
Yeah. I mean, look, when in doubt, like when it comes to words, don't really care. But the alternative would be really sad. So I'm just happy to have this. I like that our best player likes who he's playing with. That's sure. Yeah. I think it's more because like, hey, give me that shooter so I have more space to do what I do? Probably. But we'll take it. We will take it. It's fine. Make him and Trey your best friends. DeJounte is your other best friend. That's your posse, because those are the guys that give you the court that you want offensively. Cool. I'm fine with that. As long as the fact that we're here and he looks how he looks, I'm good. This is all I could hope for, given the circumstances. This is the best I could hope to start with. Now I just need to like knock on all the wood and just make sure that nobody else, I'm not even going to say the word, nothing else bad happens. No little misgivings. Let's just like get into the season already. Skip the rest of the preseason, like little warm up jog and get out of there.
Yeah, I'm ready, brother. We talked a little bit about the top of the show, the 3-pointers thing. The Pelicans want to take 43s again per game this year. That's what they're saying again. Yeah, I thought Willie Green had some good quotes after the first preseason game about how he's trying to evolve as a coach. He said, hey, look, James Borrego has been on me that we need to take more of these. We were 4th in 3-point percentage last year, but I think 23rd or 24th in 3-point attempts. Like, that would suggest that the Pelicans would be more efficient if they were just comfortable taking more threes. Willie is saying that he's there. He's admitted that, like when he came into the league in 2003, it was just a completely different league. And he's had to, adjust as the rest of the NBA has adjusted. I looked up the 3-point total from that 2003-2004 76ers team today. I was like, how many threes were they taking during Willie Green's rookie year? Adam, they were taking 12 threes. Do you know how many mid-range jumpers that team was attempting per game?
I don't have any context for like what the volume of these is. Like I did 30, 20,
38.
20?
The 03-04 Sixers were taking 12 threes a game and 38 mid-range jumpers a game. I think Iverson was shooting 24 times a game. He was getting them up that year.
Yeah. Real hoopers know. That was, it was just an error. It was an era, it was a time. It was it's honestly, it's the basketball of our childhood and teenage years. Which is why we have like all these very, very spicy wars between, new era basketball and old. Because, It's fun to see a little dude cut through a sea of trees and still drop 40 on your head.
Hey,
And you just don't get that as much anymore.
I'm straddling both those lines. I mean, I was definitely a kid in the suburbs, heavily influenced by Allen Iverson. I mean, war number 3 because of him. I mean, my whole life, basically, you had to admire the spirit. You know, on The Sopranos where Junior's talking about Richie Aprile, he's like, he's got incredible moxie for a short man. Like, that's what it is with Iverson. It's like, golly, this guy is incredible moxie for a 5'10" guy.
And the wild part is like making it last. It shouldn't have lasted. It shouldn't have reached the peak that it reached, and it shouldn't have lasted as long as it did. Like if he was gonna pull that off, and I mean, because like you can't even compare it. Like him and Isaiah Thomas are about as close as you can get to like in terms of like what they did against the level of competition at their size. Because like Westbrook's huge. Like he played the same way and made it work in an era it wasn't supposed to work in, but it was because he was one of the top 10 athletes in the entire league. So yeah, it's going to be really weird to tell my kid about Allen Iverson at this point. Like basketball is unrecognizable relative to when that guy was dominating. And it makes you think back. I saw somebody tweeting about like guys you wish could play in today's NBA. And I saw like pictures of like Josh Smith and stuff. And you're like, man, there's some guys that were just like a little too early. And we dogged on them so hard for thinking they could shoot. And now like that would be the ask on day one. And they'd fit right in. That dude would be like an annual all-star. Instead, you know, he gets to watch Tobias Harris go collect money to play basketball again this year.
I always wonder how some of the maybe like a generation before, like those guys in the 90s feel about the money these guys are pulling down now. Like, you know, when Scottie Pippen is heart of hearts, what does he think about Devin Vassell making $135 million? You know, I mean, look, the bitterness, it's not going to help you, but yeah, the money has gotten crazy. All right, before we get out of here, let's hit this GM survey. Every year, NBA.com asks the 30 GMs a bunch of questions. I don't know if it's actually the lead executive from each team that fills them out, but you know, they say they have like a high-ranking person from every team who answers this stuff. Some of my takeaways going through this: the rookie who will be the best player in 5 years, our boy Reed Shepherd with 43% of the vote. A lot of confidence in the altar boy.
Reed was crushing a lot of that specific draft class, and then like steal of the draft class. He was in the top 3 for that, even though he was selected that high. I think people just kind of still are very firm on what their thoughts of that draft class were, and the early returns suggest the same. I think Hollinger even went as far as to saying like he resembled Steph Curry more than anybody else that's come out recently. And I was like, all right. Backpedal. We're going too far. But yeah, the mustachioed one looking plain as your neighborhood accountant is going to burn it down from 3. My other takeaway from this, not very much Pelicans respect anymore. We've just jumped the shark, people. We have given them too much of Brandon Ingram and Zion back and forth. They celebrate none of these people anymore. We've got like one honorable mention vote for a most improved player for Trey Murphy, or like breakout candidate Trey Murphy. And your one Pell getting like some consistent love, Herbert Keyshawn Jones has got his national defensive reputation now. And you know what the fun part of this is? He could even like have like a worse defensive season now, and he's just going to start making all NBA defense all the time, because that's how we do that. It's like linemen for the Pro Bowl. You just like remember the name. You're like, oh yeah, that guy's still good.
I felt like it's been a series of moments, but I felt like the one moment, if you had to point the one that really tipped the scales, was that block on Paul George, because who else can make that play? I mean, that was legitimately one of the coolest defensive plays I've ever seen in my entire life. He goes from underneath the basket, blocks Paul George, pick 6, scoops it up, layup. I mean, that was like, oh my God.
Like, I think we said it at the time too. I think we were like, clip it, send it in. He's getting it this year.
Yeah. Yeah, all the GMs were asked who's the best perimeter defender in the NBA. Drew Holiday, number one, 43% of the vote. Caruso, 2, Herb Jones, 3, and Lou Dort, 4. So a former Pelican atop this list, and then 2 of the top 4 Oklahoma City Thunder players now, as if they already weren't good enough defensively last year.
Yeah, let me know when Caruso plays 70 plus games, and then we can talk. Herbert should have been 2. I could even be upset reading this, but it's just the GM survey. I think it's just more. It is some more bulletin board material. Just keep lining it up for Z to read. Like, they don't really care about you anymore, brother. So make them care.
Yeah, I mean, one of my other takeaways too, a lot of love for Chris Finch. A lot of GMs think a lot of Chris Finch. I mean, like, they're asking offensively, he was getting some votes there. Defensively, like, he was getting love on both sides of the ball.
I'll be interested to see, like, next. Let's see what this season looks like with Julius Randle having a lockdown minutes. I'm very curious. Like, we can finally render a verdict on, like, is Finch good? Is Finch bad? Like, all around coach, top 5 kind of guy. He's good. Clearly he's good. But like, we talk about needle moving coaches versus good coach. There's a lot of good coaches in the NBA, but there are like 5 that are like needle moving coaches, where like their ATOs and their scheme and their ability to adjust and interpret it like a high stakes game and put the right guys out there, where that is giving you an advantage on a nightly basis. I'm curious if he's that guy.
Do you think the Timberwolves can start Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert together for an 82-game season?
I think they're going to try, and I think they have to try, and I don't think it's a good idea. I'm already waiting for 2 specific moments, and like my Timberwolves season will not begin until I see them. I need to see the absolute like 0 defense rep after Julius gets like very comfortable playing out on the perimeter like he prefers to, and just like let somebody just go run straight into Rudy like undefended, and like maybe a nice little 3-point line Ole. And then I cannot wait. The better one is when we get that like 8-second clock and Ant's right there on the wing, just stand there ready to catch a ball. And Randall's like, I got this. I can't wait. I can't wait for it to not go in.
I thought one of the interesting questions was which active player will make the best head coach someday. Chris Paul, number 1 on this list. Garrett Temple, number 2 in this list. I have a take on this, and I think the best players make so much freaking money now. They're not going to be as incentivized to want to be good coaches. It's just like, do you care that much about being a great head coach when you have $400 million in the bank? Like, I think it's more likely that it's a fringe guy. Like, when Ime Udoka is playing in the NBA, how many people are like, yeah, Ime Udoka will be the best coach in the NBA, one of the best coaches in the NBA someday.
What we're talking about really is like, what taps that psycho basketball vein for you? Like, what scratches the itch for you when you're a player? Because like for CP, he's gone this entire time, and he got an early peak where he was at the absolute top of the game. He probably fell off in terms of his production, fell off more of a cliff than he wanted to. And now is like moved into like the senior mentor guy. He may still have something left to prove in basketball. He may not be ready to leave the NBA alone, but I also think like we know that we're about to see a path for those players into ownership groups. So it may be exercising their basketball authority like to a higher level of ops, not just as a coach, because
it does seem like that's where we're headed.
And that's the guy that put that first gigantic jump for those senior and veteran players to get those big chunks, those giant contracts. CP made sure that those were his deals. He was one of those first dudes that hit that 30 million mark. So yeah, it just wouldn't shock me if like coaching isn't appetizing enough, but we can get the occasional guy that like the psycho competitor guy that just like has to be doing the tactics or he doesn't know how to relate to basketball. We'll get one, but I agree with you in
I mean,
general.
yeah,
Like,
there is one. He's coaching the Lakers right now. I mean,
yeah,
he quit a very successful and lucrative media career to deal with all these Lakers headaches. There's also prestige that comes with the Lakers job too.
yeah.
But
And he also maybe, maybe we could probably argue is like those like a significant like line skip kind of thing in coaching, but a unique opportunity.
yeah, I mean,
Um,
if Chris Paul gets into coaching, I don't think he'll be doing 5 years as an assistant coach. I think he'll just be a head coach. And I mean, he's like Jason Kidd. Like, there's plenty of examples. I will say that I think something that people in the league are like watching. They're like, okay, if Chris Paul does want to be a coach, San Antonio, they could need a coach in like the next few years.
It'd be really just funny seeing him be that tiny, especially if they change the apparel rules again and they like put them back in suits and you get like Chris Paul in a little suit and Vic in his prime and he's like filled out his shoulders and looks more like some of the hyper athletes gets even scarier than he is right now. That'd make for a funny picture at least. It's hard to believe that would be the route because there's the cash and the ability to enter a different way and in an even bigger like 30,000 foot view. But maybe I think he's got it's weird. His stops have been different. Like Houston didn't really like him that much and like kind of thought he was an asshole. And there was a lot of that at the Clippers too. But otherwise, like I think what we get is like really like hard professional. Like he competes a certain way and you're either up to that or you're not. And if you feel insecure in front of it, you're probably not going to like him. I'm curious how that would play.
The last thing I got for you, you hit on this a little bit. Which team's level of success this season is toughest to predict? Lakers were 1, and the Houston Rockets and the New Orleans Pelicans were 2. I agree. The Pelicans are hard to predict. I agree with you, GMs. I don't know which way this is going to go.
I'm going to once again, for like the third year in a row, say that I don't think the Lakers are hard to predict. I think everybody just still struggles with name and status with them. They're exactly what they were last year. It's the same thing. Just
not a good enough roster 1 through 15 in
there's no reason
the brutal West. That's it.
There's no reason to keep doing this with them. The other two, 100% agree. We just talked about it. Like I'm very, very, very concerned about November and how they come out of that first 25 games in the lead up to the NBA Cup tournament, the Emirates Cup. And if they have a winning record in that first 25 games, I'm going to think this is a pretty good team. And we shall see if that happens, but these outcomes could be all over the map. Like if you told me they were a 43 win team or a 53, I think anything in there is in play right now.
I think you're right. I believe that. I mean, look, if Zion is available, he certainly looks motivated. He looks fit right now. You put all NBA Zion next to this much talent, and that's a recipe for 50+ wins. So hopefully that's what we're talking about in March, April, and May.
And he's almost fully loaded. It's like that first time I ever downloaded a music video on Napster. Korn Freak on a Leash is like 97%. And if you just wait a little bit longer, like say 3 hours, 4 hours, you're going to have the whole thing. And you're going to have a hell of a time.
All right, Adam. No preseason game Friday. The Pelicans are back in action Sunday. We can get together early next week and talk about that one. This is a fun time of the year, man. Thanks for sitting down and doing this, and we will talk again soon.